about a hop down memory lane with me? I've made no notes on this, so I have no idea where this is going to go, but I hope you enjoy the trip with me. I grew up in the mid 1960s through the disco era in the 1970s. Those were my times, and I enjoyed them very, very much. I lived on Shoe Drive in Bridgeport, Michigan, with my dad and mom, and my sister and two brothers, in a red brick house, 4-bedroom, that my dad and my grandpa built right after World War II, and it was a pretty cool house. In thinking back, though, some of the outstanding memories that I have of my childhood, I remember that my mother kept me out of school a lot, and actually so much that at one time a nurse came from the school and told my mother that there's going to be problems if she didn't, start having me in school regularly. She expected this kind of behavior from people who lived across the tracks from us, but not from us. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I get the clear meaning and gist of it now. But she did keep me out a lot, and I remember, though, on many occasions when she kept me out, we would walk down Shreve Drive to State Street and then up to the Dixie Highway, where we would stand in front of Garshinsky's grocery store, and we would catch a bus to downtown Saginaw, where we'd spend the day. And I remember taking me to the Superior Dairy Cafeteria in Saginaw for lunch, and I always had macaroni and cheese. They had the greatest macaroni and cheese there that you could imagine, and I always had that. And I remember why this sticks in my mind, I don't know. But today in the restaurants you get the little creamers there in those little plastic things that you rip the top off from. Well, back then they were little bottles, little miniature milk bottles that had cream in them. And I always thought those were really neat. And I've actually dug some of those up over the years in my archaeological and relic rambling. But anyways, from there we would go to Woolworth's department store, where she would shop, sometimes leave me in the toy department by myself to have a look at all the toys. And she would always buy me something, though. And you could get things that were pretty neat then for a nickel or a dime. And so I don't remember particularly what she bought me, but I remember having fun there. And then I'd always look at the pet department there, where they had turtles, and what they did to them now is considered cruelty, but back then it wasn't. The turtles had hand-painted scenes on their shells. I never got one of the hand-painted ones, but I remember on a couple occasions she bought me a plastic dish. It had a little ramp in the center that went up where you could put food, and you'd fill it with water, and then the ramp and food would stay out of the water, and then she'd get me a turtle, and those were really cool. I don't remember them living very long, unfortunately, but unfortunately for them, but they were pretty neat, really pretty neat. And and then we would catch the bus back and be home by the time my sister and brothers got out of school and my dad came home from work. I don't think he knew all the times that she kept me home. I remember one time she kept me home after school was out. She wanted me to go with her to the IGA store on the Dixie Highway. So Dad drove us over there, and I went in with her, and there was my school teacher, Mrs. Butler. I don't know how that came to mind, but that was her name, Mrs. Butler. And she was a kind person. She was really neat. But I was embarrassed because I had been out of school that whole day, and here I am out now looking like I'm feeling fine and shopping with my mom. And she just said hi to me and hoped that I was feeling well. And the next day in school, she embarrassed me so because at the start of the day she said, "Mr. Morrison, come on up here for a minute." And I think this was like 4th grade. And she picked me up and she sat me on her lap and she said, in front of all the other kids, she said, "Now, you were really embarrassed yesterday, weren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And I was really embarrassed then too. But I don't remember her point, other than maybe it was to embarrass me so that I would be in school. But I was also in Mrs. Butler's class. I remember recess time, because my mom, she was a good woman. I mean, she really was. She was a good mom. But she was grossly overprotective with me. I mean, and she wrote notes every day for me to be kept inside during recess time. She didn't want me going out and playing, thinking I was going to get hurt, like any other kid. Bumps and bruises are part of being a kid, right? So one day, the teacher got tired of it, and she said, "You're coming outside, and you're going to have recess with the rest of us." And I said, "But Mom wrote that letter. She doesn't want me to go out." And she said, "I don't care. You're going out." And I was glad. And so I went out, and she got me in with a bunch of boys that were playing baseball. Oh, poor Mrs. Butler. I was up to bat. No, I forget how it happened exactly, but I wasn't up to bat. But somebody accidentally swung the bat and hit me right in the bridge of the nose, knocked me out, and she was so scared. But she got me up and got me home and told Mom what happened. And I can't remember my mom's reaction, and I'm surprised I can't, because I'm sure it wasn't a pleasant reaction. But I remember sitting up for 24 hours straight. She made me sit up and not fall asleep because of thinking maybe I had a concussion or something. But poor Mrs. Butler. She was just trying to do what was best for me and let me have a good time like the other kids were. Well, you know how that goes. We never took elaborate vacations when I was a kid. We couldn't afford to. Dad had a decent job. He was a setup man at Chevrolet Transmission in Saginaw, and he made, decent money for the time. But we would usually go up to, we lived inside Bridgeport, as I said, and we'd usually go up to Tawas Lake, about an hour and a half north of us, and Bill Pop, who was a farmer in Bridgeport, he let us use his cabin there, and we would often vacation there. And I hated it at the time. Well, I didn't hate it. There were parts of it that I didn't like. For example, if you wanted to brush your teeth and wash up in the morning, you'd have to go in the kitchen and hand pump the water, and it was cold, always cold. And same thing at night when you were getting ready for bed. If you had to use the restroom, it was a little building out behind the cottage, and it was odoriferous, an unpleasant smell, to say the least. But at night, it was a whole different problem. At night, we had chamber pots at that cottage. And if you don't know what a chamber pot is, it's a pot that's slid under the bed, and if you have to pee or do number 2, you used one of the pots. I have a particularly horrifying memory of one of those chamber pots. It was a metal one, and if you've ever sat on one, I don't mean any pun intended, but they're a real pain in the ass. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was sleeping in a room by myself, and there was a fierce, raging electrical storm going on outside. And I don't know why, but I took the chamber pot out into the dark kitchen. And there were big windows on the one end of the kitchen. You could see the lightning flashing and the thunder rumbling, and it just reminded me of the agony that was going on in my stomach. But at any rate, that's where I decided to sit on the chamber pot. I didn't think anybody would come across me there. And nobody did. But I remember thinking the whole time, I know I'm going to get struck by lightning, and this metal chamber pot is going to be fused to my butt, and I'm going to have somebody help me to get it off. Well, no lightning struck, but I was stuck. I was stuck, and it hurt. But I finally got out of the situation on my own, and was none the worse for wear, I guess. But that memory stands out so well in my mind of going to Pop's cottage, along with another potty memory. This one concerned my mom, my sister Roseanne, and my sister-in-law Jean Pop, who at that time was Jean Pop. She hadn't married my brother yet, so she wasn't Jean Morrison yet. But we were all up to the cottage, and it was night. And Dad and my brothers were, I don't know, they might have been off fishing yet, but all 3 girls had to go to the bathroom. And none of them wanted to go out to the outhouse, and it wasn't late, and they for some reason didn't want to use the chamber pots, I guess. Well, there was some pretty heavy bushes next to the cottage, by the kitchen, which is where the front door, one or two front doors was. So their plan was to sneak out, get in the bushes, do what they had to do, and come back in. And I thought, could I make some chaos? Because even though we didn't have running water, and the stove was a wood-burning stove, we did have electricity, and we did have outside lights. And to my 12-year-old mind, I saw an awesome opportunity. So I waited till they got out there, and I figured they were reasonably well into doing what they had to do. And I turned on the porch light. I will never forget the screams that came from them. Never. They screamed and they came rushing into the house. And I never, ever saw the reaction of anger on their faces like I saw that night. But it didn't last long because I busted out laughing and they busted out laughing then. And it was funny in retrospect, but I never lived that down. One of those so special memories, yes. Well, I'm going to stop here. There are other vacations I want to tell you about, but perhaps in the near future I'll do another one of these little rememberings with you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for stopping by. Please like and subscribe if you did, and God bless.